Hi, my name is Mark Copeman. Welcome to another edition of Solopreneur Secrets. And in this particular session, we're going to be talking about the thorny issue of revenue streams and the different types, I believe, that you need to create. Because if you're asleep, you're not earning money. If you're on holiday, you're not creating for the future. If you're delivering services, then how on earth can you be selling? It's a constant conundrum, it's a constant juggle, but there is a way around it. If you're interested, keep watching. So maybe you're already experiencing this issue. Maybe you've recently gone it alone and you're trying to figure out how to manage your time, how to juggle the constant demands on your time about whether you need to be selling to somebody or whether you should be delivering a particular service and so on and so on. And very, very quickly, it becomes a bit of a headache to know how best to spend your time because if you don't have any business coming in, you need to be selling 100% of the time. But yet, if you are completely booked for the next 4 weeks, how on earth can you be selling? So there is a way around this, and it's a way that I've certainly managed to achieve over the years, and that is to create 3 different types of revenue stream. Because if you can do that, if you can create a consistent baseline level of revenue and then let it flex up and down beyond that, you're able then to satisfy the bank manager, you're able to pay the credit card bills, to put food on the table, pay the mortgage bills, all those sorts of things. And so once you have that baseline, then you're less worried about money coming in. Anything else is almost a bonus. And if you can get around that, if you can make sure you're above that immediate threshold, which you need to work out what it is you need to earn just to stay afloat, the pressure gets taken off. And when the pressure is removed from your shoulders, you become more creative and you just do better things for clients. You sell less hard. I've witnessed it for myself. I've seen it. When you start to have the luxury of different types of revenue coming in, everything just gets easier. And so that's what you need to strive for. Now, the important thing to remember, these 3 revenue streams, which I'll talk about in a second, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is something, however, that you can aim to do and have a plan in place to do. But don't expect to achieve this straight away. The first thing you have to achieve is that baseline. So, the 3 different types of revenue, for me, this trio of revenue streams. The first one is the services revenue, which I'm sure you're already starting to achieve. Or if you're not, that's the first starting point. You're selling your time for money. Okay, so what you're good at, your skill set, whether it be coding, whether it be design, whether it be public speaking, whatever it is, you deliver a service and people pay you for it. That's the first one. The second type of revenue stream is having a product. And the third type of revenue stream, for me, the holy grail, is having a recurring revenue stream. So let's get into each one in some detail. So services revenue, in theory, that's straightforward, isn't it? You are charging money for the services that you offer. As I say, it could have been coding, it could be writing, it could be design, it could be public speaking. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're essentially charging blocks of time and swapping that for income, which is great. It still gives you freedom and flexibility. It's not the same as a corporate job, but unless that money is coming in, unless the orders are coming in for your time, then of course that revenue sits there at zero. So it's really important to balance up selling those services and having those inquiries coming in, as well as being able to deliver them in the first place. So I'm going to assume that you're expert in your trade, you know how to deliver a service for somebody and deliver it well. You might want to consider how you charge for it, because the chances are you can probably charge more than you do, but we'll cover that in a separate video in terms of pricing. But services revenue is the number one, and it's the thing where you will start as a solopreneur, I'm sure. In 99% of cases, you will start by becoming a freelancer, becoming a consultant, and swapping your time for money. But there is more to achieve. And you will never, I don't think, get that absolute peace of mind if you just have that services revenue. If you can achieve more with the next 2 elements, I think your life will be much easier. So achieving product revenue, as I've mentioned at the beginning, is not going to happen overnight. To create any form of product takes some effort. However, you can start small and you can get bigger, that's for sure. You haven't got to create an all-singing, all-dancing product on day one. In fact, my recommendation is you don't, because if you put hours and hours and hours into creating something which never sells, then what's the point of that? So there's lots of different products that you can create. You can write a book. You can create some kind of download. You can write just an ebook, something which people might swap a few dollars or pounds for. You could create something physical, an actual product. You may sell something on Amazon or eBay even. There's lots and lots of different product types. But for me, what you need to do is to figure out a plan to create that product. So if at the minute you've got services revenue coming in, the way to create the product is to start to allocate and block out time in your diary, and it might be a half day a week to start with, to start creating and investing in that product in whatever shape or form it comes in. So in my life, I have a handful of products out there in the world. One of them is a book. I have a couple of books which I sell on Amazon. This is focused on the IT marketplace. And you do not get rich writing a book and being a self-published author. And even having 2 books, you do not get rich. However, we'll cover this in other videos. What it does do, it starts to bring in a trickle and then several $100s or pounds or several $1,000s or pounds each month. It's a snowball effect. And the more products that you have out there, which you've created as one-off little packages, which then become evergreen and sell and sell and sell and sell, suddenly, before you know it, after 2 or 3 or 4 years, you've got a nice income coming in, which is quite steady. Again, you might not be able to live off that, but if you add that to your services revenue and hopefully some recurring revenue, which I'll cover in a moment, it starts to look pretty good. So creating products, think about that for the long term. It's something, that book will sit on a shelf for, I don't know, maybe 10 years and still be relevant. So in 10 years' time, something that I wrote a year ago could still be earning me money. And that's really appealing. That's quite different to charging your time for money. And I really like that. And it's a personally fascinating thing to wake up each morning or look each week to see how many books that you've sold. The other thing that you can also do with a book as it happens, and this is a lovely moment. I was talking to someone this quite recently. You know, when you go to an expo, where you go to you have a stall or a stand at an exhibition where you're selling your other your other services, to actually have a little credit card reader and have a pile of your books there, and people tap and buy your book is a truly wonderful thing. So that's a little bit of an aside. You will not get rich from doing that unless you become a top author, and maybe you will be one day. But don't expect to earn huge sums of money. But each product you create, in whatever form it comes, will start to, tiny changes, massive impact. It will start to have an impact on your revenue stream as you go forwards. I've talked a bit about books there, but of course it doesn't just have to be books. Far from it. I've talked about creating downloads, bits of code, whatever it may be. You may even consider, if you're talented enough, to get involved in the various marketplaces which are out there, the digital marketplaces such as Envato, where you can create themes, or you can create graphics or video templates or whatever it may be. Which can then sell, and you take a commission off of each sale which comes through. And again, the support costs for that are relatively small if you create something good. The commissions aren't fantastic, but again, if you spend, 5 working days creating something and it sells for the next 5 years, that for me is a good investment. That's a great investment in time. And what's the worst that can happen? You lose 5 days of your time. But in theory, there is no limit to the upside of selling that. The other thing you can also do, and I've seen people do this successfully, is to package your services into a product. So using a marketplace like Fiverr, and there's plenty of other Fiverr types available as well, where you say, I'm going to do something specific. It's a ring-fence service. It's not like the services revenue which we talked about at the very beginning. It's a very, very small package of your service, which is perhaps templated in some way behind the scenes so that you can speed up the delivery of that service. So think about some things that you could do to add huge value to someone, and I'm not suggesting you literally charge them $5 because that's quite hard work. But creating that product in a sort of a package service type way is a really interesting idea. And I think linked to that, you have the likes of Cameo, which is huge at the moment, where you have celebrities who perhaps aren't doing so much at this moment. As I record this in December 2020, they're creating products all the time by delivering personalized messages to people, which people are paying for, and then they of course get that cut of that revenue. So it's going on all the way around us, and that's all actors are doing there and celebrities are doing there, just talking to a camera a bit like this, being creative about it, and making people's days and earning a few dollars off the back of it. So be creative. There's plenty of products you can create, and link those products, of course, to your niche, to your marketplace, which helps you to sell your services revenue too. So make sure there is a link. It kind of doesn't make sense to create something which is completely tangential to what you're doing. So the holy grail of revenue creation for me is recurring revenue. And recurring revenue is something which people simply pay for every month or every year, but typically every month. I suppose it could be every week as well. But to create a service which has a recurring revenue off the back of it is the business model for the future. We've seen the likes of Microsoft, we've seen the likes of Adobe do this. If it works for the big guys, why shouldn't it work for the small guys too? You know, let's remember what Microsoft did. You used to buy a copy of Office, and it would sit on your desktop for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, and eventually you'd have to shell out another £100, $100, whatever it may be, for a new CD, perhaps 5 years later. And Microsoft recognized that is not a great way for them to earn a living as a business, and they needed to change their business model, and that's where the software as a service bit came in for them. And now, of course, you have to pay every single year. They offer more value, but you have to pay every year for their essentially their cloud services, the software that gets delivered to your desktops and your devices. So this is a great business model for the solopreneur as well. I have a recurring revenue business. I will perhaps talk about that in another video, which is quite separate to my IT business activities. I also have a recurring revenue business in the IT world as well, where I have a membership site, a course site, which people pay for every year as well. So creating subscription revenue, let me just put this health warning on this little element here, is hard. Okay, it takes effort and it takes dedication. But if you can crack it, if you can do it, then it's one of the most consistent forms of revenue you can have. You can actually drag the row of your cash flow along by a good few months, because you pretty much know what that baseline of revenue is going to be. And once again, there is no upside to creating it. So if you can create that ongoing recurring revenue element to your solopreneur business, you can have your product revenue and you can have your services revenue. You can start to see how you can get that consistency of revenue over the months. I've talked about a membership site, for example, where you're adding content to a site perhaps on a regular basis within your niche. You've got simpler things, although it's also very hard to do. I would call YouTube ad revenue. I would call that as a recurring revenue business as well. But you have to keep contributing content to the platform, or your revenue stream will completely dry up. But that for me is it's one of the simplest ways of creating recurring revenue. But remember, you are not in control of that content. YouTube can change the rules any time that they want to. So just be aware of that. That may not be the best way. If your ownership of your platform and you handling all those charges and those members, keep it in your control is the best way of doing things. So a few other suggestions for creating that recurring or ongoing revenue, and again, it's about getting creative. If a membership site is a too tall order for you, there's plenty of other things. So for example, I know people that have been very successful in reselling other people's services. So it could be almost a face-to-face physical sale where you're taking a commission if you've sold I don't know, somebody else's service or a piece of software or whatever it may be, that can be quite lucrative, particularly again if it's in your niche and it's something that you work with every day. People have no problems typically in paying you for referring their services. So have a think about the sort of people in your network and whether you could resell some of the stuff that they do. Linked to that, of course, there's plenty of product affiliate schemes out there. So the likes of Amazon, it's not easy to make a whole load of money, but if you've got plenty of traffic coming into your website, a few links here and there or a few promotions here and there, suddenly there's a couple of £100 or dollars coming in every month, and that's just something else to layer on, in theory, for a very, very small amount of effort. Perhaps the single hardest thing to do, but there's plenty of people out there doing it, and it's something that I've had experience of too, is to create your very own software as a service business, which again is that recurring revenue service. I talked about Microsoft. I co-founded a service back in 2010 called Customer Thermometer, which was pretty much the world's anyway, I like to think it was, first one-click feedback survey tool. It's still very successful today as I record this in December 2020. We created that business from scratch. I sat on this very floor with some very big pieces of paper over 10 years ago now, and we created a service which people have bought and bought and bought, from very small business right the way up to big corporate. And with that comes responsibility of developing software and keeping data safe and creating a team, and that kind of moves away from the solopreneur. But there's plenty of very, very small SaaS businesses out there, run by a single person, and they're enjoying plenty of success. If you want more on that, I would recommend the Indie Hackers website for you, because there's people literally creating and building every single day right around the world. I'll be honest, there's plenty of ideas which perhaps aren't ever going to fly, but there's plenty of good ones too. You will get inspiration from websites like that if that's something you're interested in. So think about and expand your mind the different ways that you can create that recurring revenue element to your business. So to conclude, for me, these 3 revenue streams, it's all about balance. Once again, I've talked about balance in other videos, where you start with the services because that's just what you know, but then you think about ways of building a product, and you then plan ways for the future. And it might take you a year or two to figure out a subscription or recurring revenue business. But if you can do it, and if you can plan towards that, you can see reap the dividends that it can bring. So don't be put off by the effort, but focus initially on bringing in the low-hanging fruit, the money that you need to keep yourself, keep your family afloat. And then once you've got that in place, start to carve out time to create a product, and start to carve out time to create that recurring revenue business. And experiment, talk to people, involve other people, partner with people, do what you need to do. But if you stick with services revenue as a solopreneur, for me, it will always be up and down. You will never get that consistency of revenue, and as a result, you'll always have that little bit of extra pressure on your shoulders. If you can create those other revenue streams, life will become much easier.